Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and I have quite an interesting replay for you today. It features the USS Smith. It's a Tier 2 destroyer. You know, I have absolutely no idea how you get your hands on this thing. Lupez here has one, obviously. He's sailing the thing, but how he got it, I have absolutely no idea. I can remember the ship being available in one way or another at some point on the EU server, but I can't remember exactly what it was you had to do to get this ship. If you look at its World of Warships wiki entry, it's listed as a promo ship, which suggests that it was given away or earned during some kind of special event, like a mission marathon or something like that, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. All I know is I didn't get one, and I am absolutely kicking myself. Why is that then, Jingles? Is it very good? No. No, it really isn't. In most respects, it's actually pretty terrible. First, it's incredibly slow. It has a top speed of only 28 knots. It's also got a very low health pool, even by Tier 2 destroyer standards. It does not take an awful lot to sink one of these things. 7,300 health. And then you're dead. That's it. The guns are also terrible. It has 5 of them, but they only have a 6.5 kilometer range. That's right, the guns only have a 6.5, not the torpedoes, the guns on an American destroyer. Yeah. So even though it has 5 of them, they only have a 6.5 kilometer range, and they're the smallest caliber main battery guns of any ship in the game. 76.2 millimeters. Remember the Akazuki, the Japanese Tier 8? Great little 100mm guns. But they're only really good once you've invested in the inertia fuse high explosive shell skill, because 100mm at Tier 8 is just such a low caliber that the armor piercing just tends to bounce if anybody's even slightly angled, and the high explosive just tends to shatter. But once you've got the inertia fuse high explosive shell skill, then the Akazuki becomes quite fearsome. Well, the Smith has exactly the same problem down here at Tier 2. The high explosive shells, because they're only 76.2mm, can and do shatter even when you're shooting at other destroyers. Jingles, you old fool, this ship sounds like an absolute dog. Why are you so sorry that you don't have one? Well, it is a terrible ship. It really is. But it's fun. And it's fun because of the torpedoes. Which is quite appropriate, actually, because it looks like Lupez is about to get a torpedo kill. Unless I'm very much mistaken. Yep, there we go. His first kill of the game. And he was momentarily spotted, but that very convenient little smoke screen dropped by the enemy destroyer that he just sank, he's going to be able to use that to his advantage. So what is it about these torpedoes that's so good? Well, again, in many respects, they're actually pretty terrible. They only have a 4.5 kilometer range. It's American, no big surprise there. And they're also really slow. They only have a speed of 54 knots. While he does have 3 torpedo launchers, I do believe he may be about to get a second torpedo kill. Oh, one hit. And the other one? Yeah, there we go. Yes, 3 torpedo launchers. Well, that's fantastic, Jingles. Hell, the Shimakaze is Tier 10, and that has 3 torpedo launchers. Yes, but the Shimakaze's torpedo launchers each fire 5 torpedoes. The Smiths only fire 1. That's right, it's got 3 torpedoes, not just 3 launchers, it only has 3 torpedoes. And while the torpedo launcher at the rear is centerline mounted and can fire to either port or starboard, the ones up forward are not. So it can only ever fire 2 torpedoes at any one target unless you can turn the ship around and give it the torpedo launcher from the other side as well. But they only have a reload of about 11 or 12 seconds. Oh boy. And that's where the fun part comes in. You know, when you're in just about any other destroyer, it can be a big risk taking speculative torpedo shots. You know the sort of thing I mean. There's an enemy ship that disappeared behind an island, and he didn't see you. And if he holds to the same course and speed, and you fire off your torpedoes now, he's going to run straight into them as soon as he comes around the side of the island. But if he made a change in his course and his speed, Those torpedoes are going to miss. He's going to come around the side of the island and see you, and you still have to sit around a minute waiting for your torpedoes to reload. You never really have that problem in the Smith. You can afford to just fire torpedoes off just in case, because you never have to wait longer than 12 seconds for the launcher to be ready to go again. Alternatively, you know when you're chasing down a destroyer and you've seen his torpedo launch and you've managed to avoid them, so you turn broadside on to get all of your guns shooting at him, to try to nail him before he gets away, because it's going to be, depending on the tier that you're playing, a minimum of 40 to 60 seconds or more before he can reload his torpedoes. Yeah, you don't get that in the Smith either. He's always got a torpedo ready to fire at you. Even worse, let's say his first torpedo hit you. It's only one torpedo, didn't do a huge amount of damage, but it did cause flooding, so you use the damage control. Yeah, that's right. Now it's on cooldown, and there are more torpedoes coming. This thing can be an absolute nightmare to fight. Luckily, if you are fighting a Smith, remember, it only has a top speed of 28 knots, it only has 7,300 health, its guns only have a 6.5 kilometer range, and they're probably not going to do any damage to you even if they do hit, because they're only 76.2 millimeter. The torpedoes, while they're fun, only have a 4.5 kilometer range and are deadly slow with a speed of 54 knots. The Smith does not actually have many advantages. I mean, you can kill an AFK St. Louis. That's not a challenge. Was spotted, however, while coming around the corner and finishing that St. Louis off. But the often overlooked good thing about having really shitty guns that only have a 6.5 kilometer range is now that the St. Louis is dead, even though he's just fired his guns, his surface detection range is still only 6.5 kilometers, because that's the maximum range of his guns. So with the St. Louis dead, none of those guys can see him, despite the fact that he was blazing away with his little 76.2mm pop guns. Of course, now he's capping, so they're going to have to come back and deal with him. So how do you make a Smith work? Well, you basically have to learn American destroyer captain tactics, which is appropriate because it is an American destroyer after all. But unlike other American destroyers with their terrible 4.5 kilometer range torpedoes, the Smith doesn't have decent guns to back it up with. And it's horribly slow and doesn't have a lot of health. So whereas other American destroyers can just get away with not firing torpedoes at all and instead just staying at maximum range, firing their guns, and using their speed and maneuverability to avoid getting hit, the Smith can't do that. The maximum range of its guns is 6.5 kilometers and it doesn't have speed and maneuverability, so it's going to get slaughtered in a gunfight. If you're going to be any good in the Smith, you have to start learning how to use terrain to your advantage, which is something that most American destroyer captains should be doing, learning how to use terrain to sneak up on enemy ships undetected in order to make the most of your 4.5 kilometer range torpedoes. But most American destroyer captains don't really learn how to do that, because it's hard, and it's just easier to play the ship as a gunboat, and arguably more fun to play the ship as a gunboat. But you don't have that luxury in the Smith, because one thing it most definitely is not... Oh, and there's another kill with his guns. Damn you, Lupez, you're making me look stupid here. But it's not a gunboat. I mean, seriously, 6.5 kilometer range guns, 76.2mm caliber. It is not a gunboat. Oh, he's going to do it again, isn't he? He's going to get the Kraken with his guns on that Dresden just to make me look like an idiot. He's not even looking. Yeah, there it is. Cool ships don't look at explosions. Okay, roll the Kraken. I swear he's doing it on purpose. But this is an example of exactly what I'm talking about. He launched those first two torpedoes at the projected path of that Albany over there, but the Albany's slowed down, so they're going to miss. But it doesn't really matter. In the couple of seconds it took him to realise that those torpedoes were going to miss, they'd reloaded, so he could just fire them off again. In fact, just to put this whole thing into perspective for you, I'm going to compare the Smith's torpedoes against the guns of a Tier 2 cruiser, like for example the Japanese Tier 2, the Chikama, which is armed with 152mm guns that fire 5 shots per minute. 5 shots per minute is a slower reload on a Tier 2 cruiser's guns than the Smith has with its torpedoes. Another good thing about these torpedoes, as Lupez encounters the enemy Smith and sinks it just in time to run into one of the torpedoes fired by the enemy Smith, He didn't see those torpedoes until they were right on top of him. That Smith actually fired them right as it came around the side of that island up ahead. But he didn't see them as he cleared the smoke screen, at which point they were already halfway across that stretch of water towards him. He had about 2 seconds notice of that torpedo hitting him. Oh, he's hit the Albany. And there's the Confederate award. He's hit just about everybody on the enemy team at this point, and the Albany is sinking, and right now he's just waiting for the Albany to die. There it is, kill number 7. And that just leaves the enemy battleship. It's a Nassau, the German Tier 3, and he's capping, so the Nassau has to come to him. So he can camp around this island, whereas torpedoes are going to give that Nassau very, very little chance of defending himself. Hang on a second, Jingles. You said this ship only has 7,300 health. We can quite clearly see that Lopez has 8,000. Have you been sniffing the port again? Well, he's running Survivability Expert. It's a Tier 3 skill that gives you 350 hit points per tier of the ship. So he's got an extra 700 health for 8,000. Oh, and there's the Nassau. Torpedoes away, sneak forward. Nassau sees him, shoots, misses. Most of his shots hit the island. One of the torpedoes hit the island. Now at this point, both Lopez and that Nassau have a bit of a predicament. The Nassau wants to stay as close to the side of that island as he can, so that he can continue to spot Lopez. As long as he's within, I think, about 1.8 kilometers, it doesn't matter whether Lopez has got an island between him and the Nassau, or whether Lopez has deployed his smokescreen or not. You can quite clearly see here there's no line of sight, but the Nassau still has him detected. He's proximity detecting him. Ideally, Lopez is going to want to just get away from the island, pop his smoke, and torpedo the Nassau to death, but he can't do that because he's the only one spotting him at the moment. The South Carolina on the team is just too far away, and doesn't have a clear line of sight to the Nassau. So Lopez has to play it cagey here and wait for that South Carolina to get in a position where he will be able to keep the Nassau spotted, so Lopez can actually make the most of his smokescreen. He's checking there. The South Carolina's, there it is. The South Carolina is now spotting the Nassau. The Nassau's seen the South Carolina. They both start shooting at each other. So now Lopez is able to move forward, pop his smokescreen. He's momentarily detected, but there's nothing the Nassau can do about it because he's shooting at the South Carolina. And with the South Carolina spotting the Nassau has no options remaining here. In order to not be spotted by the South Carolina, he's going to have to get closer to this smokescreen. And you don't want to get close to a smokescreen because smokescreens fire torpedoes at you. And, as we can quite clearly see, that's a very, very bad thing if you're in something as slow and lumbering as a Nassau. So he's just firing into the smoke now and hoping that he hits something. The South Carolina has now lost sight, but there's another torpedo hit and there's more flooding. And I'm pretty sure the Nassau will have used his damage control the first time he took the torpedo hit, so he's probably going to flood to death at this point. Lopez backing off around the side of the island. There's another torpedo hit and more flooding. So if he wasn't sinking before, he is definitely sinking now. There he is. South Carolina's just caught sight of him again, which allows Lopez to continue trying to set a fire. But he is definitely taking flooding damage. And he's just firing blind into the smoke here with his fingers crossed, hoping that something's going to happen. At this point, Lopez doesn't even need to fire any more torpedoes at him because that guy is going down. And that, boys and girls, is why I am absolutely kicking myself, despite the fact that it is a terrible ship. And it is a terrible ship, but I am still absolutely kicking myself that I did not get the Smith the first time it was available. Hope you enjoyed the video. Lopez, thank you for sending that one in. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.